Hey friends, today I want to take you on a journey. I'm going to walk back to my old school roots and do some teaching today. And I want to teach you that there is one thing, only one thing that you as a business owner must focus on. You know, I have the opportunity to talk to thousands of business owners per year. I have the opportunity to look at their finances, talk with them, coach them, help them build what I call value within their company. There's a sad story that happens all too often. Let's put a name to the story. Let's say Bob, because I like the name Bob. Bob is your typical American business owner. He has worked 20 years, 15 years, 30 years providing a service or product to his customers. He's been working and integrated within his community. He's giving back to charities. He's keeping his employees fed through the good times, the bad times, and he is taking the weight of a business owner seriously. He has a vision. He has a dream. And Bob has rolled his sleeves up, put his hands to the plow, as we say in the country, and just moved forward. But at some point, something is going to happen. Bob's going to get tired. He's going to say, man, I've been doing this for 30 years, bro. I want to go to the beach. I want to go play. I want to go to the mountains. I want to spend more time golfing or fishing or hunting. I want to spend more time with my grandbabies. That's a common example that I often hear. Or Bob may get sick. Him physically, himself, he may get sick and he's like, man, I don't have the energy to go forward. Or Bob may say, you know what? I'm tired of pushing as hard as I've been pushing. I'm just going to coast for a while. I'm just going to coast and allow the income to provide for my needs. Or Bob may say, you know what? I've got a good team around me. I want to move my company to them. I want to give my company to my kids. I want to move on so I can change chapters in life. You see, the reality is at some point in time, all of us as business owners will leave our companies. Period. Mic drop. No holds bar. The buck stops right there. We are going to leave our companies at some period in time. What often happens though is this. Bob has about roughly 80%, according to all the statistics, has about 80% of his net worth tied up in his company. If I look at his balance sheet, I can see his house. I can see a small 401k, typically reasonable 401k, nowhere matching the W-2 employees marketplace or allocation amount. He may have a property. Maybe he bought the building that his company works in. But if you look at his net worth statement, his balance sheet, the vast majority of his net worth is tied up in this company. This company comprises of a highly concentrated, highly illiquid asset. Bob didn't really care because for years now, he has been taking his income out of the company, either through a W-2 paycheck or a draw. He has been using the company, according to his tax advisors, doing things like, hey, I'm paying for my cell phone out of the company. I'm paying for my health insurance out of the company. My vehicle is bought for by the company. Some of my trips, a couple of my vacations up alongside continuing education. And I do these things through my company as business expenses. And if properly done right, the accountants are correct. You can receive extreme benefit from your company. And so Bob's sitting here saying, man, I live on this income and I use these benefits in the company and I have a little bit of retained earnings or net operating income that I invest back into the company or that I take a little bit out. And when he looks at his lifestyle, hypothetically, he's making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million a year within this ecosystem of this one asset. But Bob has reached this point where he's like, man, something's got to change for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. It's not always bad things. He may look at it and say, man, my company is at its pinnacle right now. I want to get out now while I can. What transpires next is Bob engages either a broker or a mergers and acquisitions advisor. He engages somebody to say, hey, I've got this highly illiquid asset and I want to move it from myself to somebody else. What transpires next is shock and awe for business owners. Oftentimes, a broker will charge 10% of the sales proceeds, whether it's 100% cash or whether it has earnouts, et cetera, built into the deal. There's about a 10% broker fee. The Internal Revenue Service is going to hit you with all sorts of taxes. They're going to hit you with recapture tax, and capital gains, and ordinary income, and so many other taxes. And whenever Bob goes to sell his company, he pays everybody who needs to be paid. He pays the attorneys. I had one company that sold that their legal bill was over $2 million on a legal bill. Crazy. He pays their accountants, pays everybody to help get the company sold. And what he's left with is this nest egg now of hopefully liquid cash. And he takes that cash and he invests it. He goes down to his financial guy or invests in real estate or whatever he's going to invest in. It doesn't matter. But the proceeds from that investment typically don't provide the same level of lifestyle that Bob was used to living. It's a sad game. And many times, friends, I've seen where business owners are shocked. Oh my goodness, my company's not worth what I thought it was worth. And now they end up taking their business off the market. And now they go back and try to grow the value of the company because they realize that if 80% of my net worth is tied up to this value, this one asset, then I need to make sure that this asset is at its highest value. So friends, today I want to talk about the one thing, the absolute one thing, and that is you and I as business owners need to focus on value growth. Nothing else. Value growth. What are we doing to grow the value of our companies? Is our decision today adding value or taking away value? Is the direction we're heading, the products we're offering, the people we're employing, are they adding value to us or are they taking value away? It's one or the other. There is no neutrality on this. There is not a seesaw. It is either you're all in moving value or you're not. So today I want to answer this question. What is value growth? Why should you focus on it? Now, to answer this question, we have to answer a few preliminary questions. We have to understand what is value? How is it determined? What is the value gap? And how do you close the value gap for your company? So those are the 4 things that we're going to walk through today. I've been watching a lot of social media recently to see what are the advertisements going out to business owners. So I've set up a couple of incognito modes, programmed them, and I'm seeing the various advertisements. And a lot of people focus on things like, how do you sell more? How do you convert more? How do you structure the company? There's a lot of micro niches, but I've yet to see anybody equate how this decision impacts your transferable value, how this decision will move your value to where you need it to be. As you've heard me say multiple times, and I believe this with all my heart, and I can prove it, challenge me on it. I dare you, challenge me on this. I can just about show any business owner in the small business community up to, pick a number, $20 million, $30 million, $40 million in revenue. I can just about show you that within a period of 18 to 36 months, you can double your net worth. Suggesting that's impossible. No, it's not. You've seen this in my own life. I started a company from scratch in December of 2017, and 48 months later, I had an 8-figure exit. Friends, that not only doubled, tripled, it multiplied my net worth. Now, I'd already had multiple businesses before then that I started and sold, but like so many business owners, I was focused on the wrong thing. And by focusing on the wrong thing, I was getting the exact same results that everybody else gets. And that's not who I want to be. That's not who you want to be. So let's tear apart what is value growth and why does it matter so much? And I hope at the end of this teaching episode today that you will make an action step to say, hey, I need help. I need to focus on value more than revenue or employees or all these other things that oftentimes we get sold that we should focus on. So let's begin with what is value. Now, when we talk about value, we may equate value to like our house. We have a house we paid for, and now we're going to sell it. We engage a realtor, and the realtor says, hey, your house is worth X. Well, how did you determine that? Well, the houses around you are selling for X, and so therefore your house has to be X. So we're going to list it for X, and we'll see if we can get it sold for X, whatever the X is. You know, oftentimes that's the way we view business. But friends, value is further from that. It's so vastly different than that simple example. You know, oftentimes we talk about fair market value or fair value or market value, and we use those types of values synonymously, even though they all have different measurements. But nonetheless, we would understand that, hey, we can compare our house to another house. The problem with business is this. Business is a private transaction most of the time. Even though we may know that Jim Bob down the street or Sally down the street, or I had a friend named Uniqua. Uniqua sold her business down the street. Even though she sold her business for this much, it doesn't necessarily equate that my business is going to be the exact same. Even though my revenue may be the same, even though my industry may be the same, it may not be the same price point. It could be a huge variation. I'm sure in real estate, you'd recognize that somebody who has a pristine house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, in a specific location compared to another 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in the same location that's not pristine, that has been run down. Maybe I've seen a lot of meth heads where they use meth and they cause problems in a house. That's not going to have the same value as one that's move-in ready, that's ready to roll. So in business, we have to understand there's more than just fair value, fair market value, market value. It may be investment value. What is the return of equity to you as the business owner? Is your investment, your company, which probably comprises of 80% of your net worth, is your company providing the yield equal to or greater than what you can get on the open market? That's an investment value. Your company may have strategic value. One of my companies I sold was a strategic purchase for another company. I had an offering that perfectly aligned with what they didn't have, and then instead of them trying to build it from scratch, they paid me a premium price because it was a strategic value play. What about collateralized value? When a bank looks at your company, they're going to say, hey, your company, we can collateralize it for this value. Maybe it's book value. To go talk to your accountant, they're going to say, your value of your company is X, and they're looking at your balance sheet. That's called a book value. So when we're talking about value growth, we have to define our terms. What I'm talking about when I say value growth is intrinsic value. What is your intrinsic value of your company? See, intrinsic value is the only thing that you as a business owner can directly control. The reality is when we're calculating intrinsic value, it looks almost like a penny. Whenever you look at a penny, you realize there's two sides to a penny. You have the heads or the tails. The same is true with value. There are two sides to value. But oftentimes, and I almost bet that you as a business owner are focused only on one side of the equation. So how is value determined? We understand there's multiple types of value. How is value determined? Value is determined using two sides of a penny, using two sides of a coin. The first size is revenue. How much revenue is your company making? The reason I want to use revenue versus EBITDA or whatever is because every industry has a different calculation effect. For example, in the financial world, oftentimes they'll use EBOC, earnings before owner's compensation. In the dental community, it may be EBIT, right? So there's a lot of different calculations, but nonetheless, we have revenue. We all understand what revenue is. That's one side of the penny. The other side of the penny and the other side of the coin is the multiple. So we have revenue times a multiple. The multiple is what we can control. And I'm going to illustrate that to you today. You're like, Justin, there's no way to control it. I beg to differ. You can drive up your multiple. You've seen me illustrate this a number of times throughout my career. Is you have the revenue times the multiple equals the value. Okay? So revenue times multiple equals value. Whenever I look at social media these days, there are a lot of talking heads. There are a lot of business gurus who's never sold a company, who honestly are trying to coach coaches on how to do something they've never done themselves, who focus only on revenue. And they'll say, here's how you increase your company's sales, man. Here, if you do this, you can 10x your sales, or you can 10x your revenue. That's fine. If you're at $1 million in revenue and you move it to $10 million in revenue, cool. You just 10x your company. So if you're going to increase your sales, that's great. But if you do not actively work on the multiple side of the business, the intrinsic value side of the company, then you are still getting a nominal price point. Let me illustrate it for you a couple of different ways. So let's say at $1 million, let's say your multiple, for example, is 2. That means your value is $2 million. So 1 million times the multiple of 2 is $2 million. Let's say we increased our revenue. Let's say we 10x our revenue. Cool, I'm happy for you. You're 10x your revenue, but now you've 10x your multiple problems, and your multiple remains at 2. You've taken the multiple, and now you're worth $20 million. Sweet. Anybody be happy with that? Except that that's not best in class. Except that you don't have to work as hard to get that same valuation. And so oftentimes business owners, the reason why we're in bondage, the reason why we're tired, the reason why we don't have freedom is because we're focused on revenue. We're forgetting intrinsic value. We're looking at one side of the coin here. Let's illustrate it differently. Let's say that instead of going to $10 million in revenue increase, let's say we only increase it to $5 million. And let's say hypothetically, just for fun, we take our 10 million, our multiple, and we double it. So now we have $5 million times a multiple of 2 equals Oh my goodness, we're at the same $20 million in value. So we didn't have to work. We worked half as hard. We focused on the intrinsic value of the company, what we can control, and we came to the same valuation. See, there's an underlying problem between focusing on revenue 100% and not focusing on the metrics which drive intrinsic value. The underlying problem is that it leans into your abilities as a business owner. More than likely, friends, you're highly capable. More than likely, you know your product, you know your service, you can sell it. Just like you can sell it. You can sell it to anybody because you know it. The problem is that you're so highly capable that you've not used the intrinsic value metrics to remove yourself from the epicenter of the business, and the business is still in need of you, and therefore your value is not going to be there. I want to bring you into why you have to focus on value. It's okay to talk about sales. It's okay to worry about marketing. It's okay to focus on these things, but the goal is to focus on value. Let me illustrate why. There is a thing called the value gap. What is a value gap? The value gap is where is your company's value in relation to best in class? You see, oftentimes we business owners, we believe our company is best because we look at it through the lens of ourselves. We look at it as our baby. The reality is when you go to that broker or that M&A advisor, they don't have the blood, sweat, and tears and the emotional connection to your product, your baby. They're looking at it through dollars and cents, trying to understand what is this value. And so true, the average multiple may be 5x, but your company's value maybe over here where I'm drawing a red line at 3x. And so if you have $1 million in revenue times 3x, then your value is $3 million. What, though, is often intriguing to me, and we can see this through many different types of reporting data, they're oftentimes a best in class, the highest quality of a business. They receive the highest multiple for their income range. And they're going to come over here on this far right side of a bell curve, over here into the top 1 percentile. And it is possible in this type of scenario that even though the revenue remains the same, let's say it's a $1 million revenue, that the multiple over here in the top 1% is 12. It's very possible. I'm just picking numbers, but whenever we do our data points, we know that the average is 5 as I'm illustrating, but your company's illustrating at 3. But we know companies within your industry with the same revenue size, same $1 million of revenue, same NAIC code, same everything, but their multiple is 12. And because they have 1 million times their multiple of 12x, their value now is $12 million. So the value gap is what we're trying to close. In our example, the value was appraised at 3x. Revenue times 3x is $3 million. That's what we illustrated here. We know that best in class is $12 million. So in this case, there is a 9x multiple for the exact same revenue. So without having to work any harder, we can focus on driving the multiple up. And by driving the multiple up, we can maintain our $1 million of revenue and close this $9 million value gap. Friends, I've been preaching about this for years. Some of you are like, dude, there's no way. I've had people on Instagram say, friend, there's no way you sold your company what you sold it for. I got the papers and the bank account to show that I did. The reason for it is because I focused on value. I focused on how can I take my company and drive the value of the company. Just are you saying that we shouldn't focus on revenue? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, I'm going to go back to my little coin here. I'm saying there are two sides to every coin. But you and I as business owners, we fall so easy to the sell, the endorphins that are created by the sales process, that we often only focus on the revenue. We focus on how can I drive revenue and how can I cut expenses. But we don't focus on the intrinsic value of the company, the things which actually move the multiple of the company. So that brings us to perhaps the single biggest question. Okay, Justin, I understand what value is. Understand value can have a number of different names. It could be fair market value, liquidation value, collateral value. It could be a number of things. But ultimately, we're trying to drive intrinsic value. That's the thing we can control. How do we drive intrinsic value? Okay, Justin, I got that. I understand there's a value gap. My company is worth X, whatever it's worth today, and I need to be worth Y in order for me to be happy with my sales price. See, friends, go back to Bob, my example at the beginning of this conversation. If Bob had focused on driving value, he could have moved his value up high enough that whenever he sold it, he could have taken care of the broker fees, the taxes, and still had enough money to cover all of his lifestyle expenses. I mentioned this a few times now, and I double-checked the math on it. And Cody Sanchez was right. She was on a podcast with Ed Motlett. Cody Sanchez made the statement. She said there's roughly 11 million businesses that are going to try to exit in the next roughly 6 years. I think her number's a little low based on my data through the Exit Funding Institute, but I'll give her the point of fact. And she said out of those 11 million, only 1 million will actually transact. Now, that's just sell. That's not for the premium price. That's just, hey, we're just going to sell. That means 10 million business owners are not going to transact. That means 10 million of my brothers and sisters who are business owners out there who put their blood, sweat, and tears into their company to drive a service and a product to feed a community, to feed employees, to provide a good service to their customers, to help support vendors, to deal with the charities. These 10 million Americans over the next 6 years will never realize the value of their company. They're not going to sell. So how do we close the value gap? We have to focus on the multiple side of it. There are 256 points, metrics, measurements that I can point to in most companies that business owners can adjust. I'm here in a podcast studio, and there's a soundboard media board over here, and it's got little dials and knobs on it. And I know that with our audio technician, he can come in here and he can move things around and it can adjust the sound, but I'm not changing what I'm doing. I'm still speaking the same way I always speak, but he can take this and make it sound really good, or maybe sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks. It can do a number of things with this soundboard because he understands how to change the underlying effects. In the multiple, I often teach this. I tell you there are 8 areas of business. We have to focus on all 8 of them simultaneously, in congruency, with the same focus on all of them. We've got to keep a balance here. There's one of my favorite verses in Proverbs says, an unjust balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Whenever I read that word, an unjust balance, I think about almost like, Lady Justice, who we see, she's blindfolded holding the scales of justice. A balanced business is where the scales are in perfect harmony. It's where, if you're looking at the pie chart I'm drawing on the board here, it's where every one of these segments are in equal harmony with each other. Kind of like when I was a kid, man, we used to have a merry-go-round. Have you ever ridden one of these things? They were like death. You could get on these things, get somebody who's really athletic and start spinning this thing. And before you know it, you're holding on to your dear life, experiencing G's that maybe like a fighter pilot would experience. At least that's what I felt like when I was a kid. And if you let go, man, you go flying off. The reality is the same is true for this 8 areas of business. In these 8 areas of business, there are points that hold up the multiple. Through our launching of the Value Growth Academy and the Value Growth University, we have packaged all of these points into a digestible track. So if we have a business owner that's like, man, I'm just scrambling right now, cool. Go to our Value Growth Academy. You can pay a small amount of money, have a year access for it, have once a month group coaching calls, and we can deal with these 8 areas of business. If you're like, dude, I want to accelerate my business rapidly. I want to do what you did, Justin, and have an 8-figure exit in X number of years. Man, I'm in my 60s right now. I don't have much time left in terms of my abilities. My health is dwindling, or you know what? I'm just tired. I just want to go play with the kids, and I don't want to waste time, man. I want to go. I want to charge hell with a water pistol. The university is for you. It's a 12-week program that will drive your company. When you get done with that, you're going to understand these 8 areas of business. You're going to walk through multiple assessments. You're going to have a ton of homework. But more importantly, when you get done, you're going to be able to see the weakness areas of your company and the movements you need to start making to drive the multiple of your company up. Unbelievable opportunity there that you have. How do we close the value gap? We focus on the multiple. We focus on the 8 areas of business and all the things to get them in harmony. That's number 1. Number 2 is we have to remove the owner from the epicenter of the business. We have to get the owner outside and turn the business into a business. Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, was one of the very first books I ever read. I love it. I love how he does the quadrants, right? He starts off with employed and self-employed, business owner and investor. I'm finally at that investor phase of my life, but I was self-employed for 15 years. Everything ran through me. I wanted to keep control of it. Once I became a business owner and started focusing on the business, working in the business, and focusing on closing the value gap, did I then drive my value? So there are things like owner readiness, business readiness, business attractiveness. Is your business attractive to an investor or to a buyer? Is your ownership attractive? Let's talk about the various capitals in your business. You have your structural capital, your social capital, and so many other areas within your company that drive the multiple. So friends, how do we close the value gap? We create harmony here in the 8 areas of business for efficiency. We remove the owner out of the business, and we constantly measure and adjust. As I was growing my company to the 8-figure exit, I would run a valuation metric on my company 4 times a year. This is what I do with my private clients. People who said, Goodbread, I want your brain, help me in this thing. It costs some money. I'm not cheap. You don't want somebody who's cheap doing this. We've all seen that area, and you as a business owner know this. You're probably not the cheapest in town. But when I take them to private clients, I say, hey, we're gonna do a formal valuation on your company, and then we're gonna do benchmarks throughout the year, and we're gonna double and triple check these things, and we're gonna make 90-day sprints to move the company so that we can reach your ultimate goal. That's what I was doing for myself. That's what my coach was doing for me. And friends, it changed my life. So I'm gonna finish up with this question. Are you 100%, nothing less, focused on driving the value of your company? 100%. That entails all 8 areas of the business, not just one. Or do you find yourself focused on the things that excite you and only you? If you were to fast forward in your life, whenever that time may come, when you're making a decision, what do I do with my company? Because it's coming, friend. It's coming like a speeding train, and it may be quicker than you ever imagined. You know, I talk about Emily. This is a sidebar. I talk about Emily and her sickness. But if you pull Emily's situation out of the mix, and if you looked at my company, the return on equity, my stock price of my company, according to the offers I received, the multiple offers I received, only made sense for me to sell. Take that money, use my youth, I'm in my 40s. Imagine if you had time and money. What would you do? Holy cow, friends. 2.5 years now. I've had a blast. I now have multiple businesses. I'm impacting more people. It's so much fun. So it may not be a sickness. It may not be a desire. It may not be that you're tired. When we sell our companies, we feel like, it's not true, we feel like our peers looking at us asking the question, what did he do wrong? Why do you have to sell? When in reality, they're going, dude, what did you do? Help me, help me. So let me ask you the question. Are you 100% focused on value? If you're not, are you going to be like Bob? More than likely, statistically, you will be. Remember the numbers. 11 million businesses are going to try to sell between now and the year 2030, and only 1 million of them will sell. 10 million will not. And out of those 1 million, there's only a small handful. The statistic is 4% of those that transact are happy with the transaction. You're looking at one guy who was extremely happy with the transaction. It was everything I could have dreamt of and more. But friends, I'm in the 4% minority. So think about this. As a business owner, what are you going to do to change your trajectory? I submit to you, think about the penny. Think about the penny I'm holding yet again, this little 4-inch penny that I use from stage. Multiple sides. If you're focusing on sales and revenue, as so many on social media try to get us to buy their widget, you're missing the mark, and you're going to work harder than you need to work to produce less value than what you could achieve. Focus on value. If you need help, guys, we got an offering that we're coaching business owners day in, day out on how they can drive value, and we're changing people's lives. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm having more fun today than I've had in an extremely long time. It's a lot of fun. Till next time, friends, y'all go out and make it a great day.